Album of the Week, episode 74. Hey guys, this week we're taking a look at the Schumann Symphonies under the Vienna Philharmonic, the Weiner Philharmoniker as they call it, under Leonard Bernstein. I should also mention, if you notice the intro sequence is a little different, that is because starting this new year, Happy New Year by the way, hopefully 2021 is a little better than 2020, but the new intro, I wanted to switch over. I had been editing all of my Album of the Week series, the whole series on Wondershare Filmora, but now I'm going to be switching over to Final Cut Pro, so there's going to be a different intro sequence. Other than that, you shouldn't notice too much of a change, but it'll make my life a lot easier. I don't know why I've waited this long. I guess I had a weird liking of the old way, but my computer's so slow that it just works a lot better on my Mac. Anyways, excited to start off with all 4 Schumann Symphonies on this album, which is linked below, by the way. I don't think this is on Spotify. If I can find it, it will be linked below as well. But the pamphlet in here, the liner notes, lots of great information on the Schumann Symphonies, 1 and 4, 2 and 3. And it's in that order because that's actually the order that it was written. We'll get into that a little bit today. Now, this was recorded, it looks like, in 1984 and 1985. So number 4 was recorded February of 1984. Numbers 1 and 3 were recorded in October of 1984. And number 2 was recorded in November of 1985. Interesting. So spread out pretty far. But that's the dates for this. So let's get into, I've been doing this lately on Album of the Week with these. I've been just doing some Wikipedia research, just so I make sure I'm saying everything correctly and yada yada yada. So Robert Schumann was a German composer, pianist, and influential music critic. He's widely regarded as one of the greatest composers of the Romantic era. Totally true. Schumann left his study of law intending to pursue a career as a virtuoso pianist. His teacher, Friedrich Wieck, a German pianist, had assured him that he could become the finest pianist in Europe. Totally true, but a hand injury ended his dream. Schumann then focused his musical energies on composing. Kind of sad, but ended up bringing him probably a longer lasting legacy. Generally speaking, composers' legacy is much greater because their work lives on, whereas performers die when you die, right? But not that it matters for the person. That's a side note, though. Huge thing that Robert did as well was marry Clara Schumann, one of the most famous female composers, and for good reason. She is an amazing composer. She did more work with smaller chamber works and piano, where Schumann did that as well as orchestra. I could get into the reasons why. Some of it was, people are sexist. Women were not offered the same opportunities to write larger works because they were thought of better. If they were even composing, they were thought of more dainty. I don't even know. I don't think that. But that's just how it was back then. But Clara was amazing, and actually the daughter of Robert Schumann's teacher, Friedrich Wieck. So Clara Wieck, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but they got married. And I will most likely do the music of Clara Schumann eventually on this series, so I'll be looking forward to that. But we're talking about Robert today. And I think I should also mention Clara and Robert were very close to German composer Johannes Brahms, which we will be looking at 2 weeks from now. A little bit of Brahms' Second Symphony. Anyways, though, let's get into his actual symphonies. I'm just going to do a brief overview of all this. This is not a deep dive into that. It's a deep dive. It's not even a deep dive. It's just a shallow dive over this album. Listen to it yourself, right? But I'm just giving you a little context behind it. So the first symphony was in B-flat major, opus 38, and it's also known as the Spring Symphony. and it was the first completed symphonic work by Robert Schumann. Now, although he had made some symphonic attempts in the autumn of 1840, soon after he married Clara, he did not compose his first symphony until early 1841. Until then, Schumann was largely known for his works for the piano and for voice, actually. Clara encouraged him to write symphonic music, noting in her diary it would be best if he composed for orchestra. His imagination cannot find sufficient scope on the piano. His compositions are all orchestral in feeling. My highest wish is that he should compose for orchestra. That is his field. May I succeed in bringing him to it. What a supportive wife. Go Clara, right? So Schumann sketched the symphony in 4 days from the 23rd to 26th of January and completed the orchestration by February 20th. The premiere took place under the baton of Felix Mendelssohn, another fantastic composer and conductor, on March 31st, 1841. That's my girlfriend's birthday. In Leipzig, where the symphony was warmly received. According to Clara's diary, the title Spring Symphony was bestowed upon due to Adolf Böttger's poem Frühlingsgedicht. The symphony's opening has traditionally been associated with the closing line as Böttger's poem O wende, wende deinen Lauf, im Tal blüht der Frühling auf, which, as we all know, translates to O turn, and change your course. In the valley, spring blooms forth. So that's kind of what the first symphony is about. As we move into the second symphony was actually the third symphony that was written. The fourth symphony was the second one, but because of some issues, I think it was in Leipzig that it was played first. It wasn't great under critical acclaim, so he later published it officially after he made a lot of revisions. But anyway, so this third symphony in C major, that's the one that most trumpet players know best because it has a wicked, evil excerpt at the very opening of the first movement. Dum, dum, da dee, dum. It's one of those excerpts that, I'm a trumpet player, by the way. It's one of those excerpts that sound easy but are extremely hard, which are not the fun ones to do. We want the other way around. But that's the reason I'm doing this album too. That's what I'm working on in my trumpet lessons this week. Anyways, the second symphony was in C major. Schumann began to sketch this symphony on December 12th, 1845. This was during his depression and poor health. He had ringing in his ears, and it prevented him from finishing the work until October 19th of 1846. The uplifting tone of the symphony is thus remarkable considering Schumann's health problems during the time of its composition. So there's just a little bit of context behind it, and that opening theme that I kind of sung appears throughout the entire symphony. And I should also mention that what I just sung, the opening movement there, is kind of a suggested Bach chorale. And it's totally possible too with that Schumann was heavily inspired by Haydn's London Symphony, number 104, which we looked at a number of weeks ago. So there's a little bit about the second symphony. As we look to the third symphony, this was the final symphony that he wrote, again with as I already mentioned, there's 5 movements in this symphony, and I should also mention too, Symphony number 2 was kind of a return to the classical era of music. Even though he was in the Romantic era, he kind of looked back upon the classical era. Anyways, now on to the third symphony. This is also known as the Rainish Symphony, and it is the last symphony composed by him. Again, not the last one published. 5 movements. We've got trumpets in E flat. That's kind of interesting. And standard orchestration. 3 trombones, timpani, strings, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 French horns. Pretty standard. And this was premiered on February 6, 1851 in Dusseldorf. It was conducted by Schumann himself, and it was received with mixed reviews. ranging from praise without qualification to bewilderment. So there's a little bit of that. And it's also a relatively short symphony, 30 minutes long or so. So very interesting, right? And then we get to the final symphony that was published, but his second symphony that he wrote, giving me George Lucas vibes. Star Wars doing it out of order. Schumann's doing the same thing, right? So this was first completed in 1841, and he heavily revised the symphony in 1851, and that was the version that reached publication. Clara Schumann, Robert's widow at the time, later claimed on the first page of the score of the symphony, as published in 1882 as part of her husband's complete works, that the symphony had merely been sketched in 1841 but was only fully orchestrated in 1851. This was untrue, and Johannes Brahms, who greatly preferred the earlier version of the symphony, published that version in 1891, despite Clara's strenuous objections. So there you go. This one has 4 movements: 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, timpani, and the usual strings. So exactly the same as the Third Symphony. So interesting stuff with all the symphonies. This is an excellent album. Leonard Bernstein is one of my favorite conductors. I'm hoping to do a book review on one of his biographies eventually. I'd love to learn more about Leonard Bernstein, and I'm sure I've done a few others that he's conducted. He's great. Vienna Philharmonic is one of the top orchestras in the world. You can't go wrong with them. When you've got this combination, you're going to get a great album, and that's exactly what this is. It's cool to have all 4 on one disc. So highly recommend you check it out. It is linked below if you want to check it out. Now, if you've watched this series for a while, you'll know I do a weird CD every 25. So the first one was a normal one that just I randomly picked. Episode 50 was a Mariah Carey album, and I went to Goodwill and I picked out this.
All right, Adam, here are your choices. You got some good ones there. Go for it. Pick your poison.
This one.
Are you sure?
Yep. I like to wiggle. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at Captain Music presents I Like to Wiggle next week. Link below where you can purchase this. I don't know if I'm excited. I think it's going to be funny. I Like to Wiggle, Barrel of Monkeys, Alligator Snap, Kangaroo Hop. It'll be interesting. That is for sure. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Like I said, if you want to skip this, I don't have the album yet. I've ordered it on Amazon, but in 2 weeks from now we'll be taking a look at Brahms' Second Symphony. So if you want to just hop right to there. Otherwise, be sure to check this one out. There's actually a trumpet player on this album though. So, and I listened to it a little bit. It's not bad music. It's a kid's, but you know, it's alright. Well, I'll talk more about that next week though. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, thumbs up, subscribe, bell button. Comment below any future album recommendations that you might have for me. Always looking for new music to listen to. And with all that being said, see you next week.